The crystal champagne flute slipped from my fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. I stared at the shards, my mind reeling from what I'd just discovered. 10 years of marriage, and this is how Ethan chose to celebrate our anniversary. Ava? What was that noise? My sister Claude's voice called from the kitchen. I couldn't find my voice. The evidence of Ethan's betrayal glowed accusingly from my phone screen, forgotten text messages laying bare his infidelity. Claude appeared in the doorway, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. "Oh, honey, what happened?" I thrust the phone at her, my hand shaking. "He's cheating on me, Claude, on our anniversary." She scanned the messages, her face darkening. "That rat bastard. I'll kill him." "No," I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. "I have a better idea." Claude raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." I sank onto the couch, my mind racing. "I need to think this through, but I won't let him get away with this." My sister sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Whatever you need, I'm here." A knock at the door made us both jump. I glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight. Who could be here at this hour? "I'll get it," Claude said, squeezing my hand before standing. I heard the door open, followed by a familiar voice that made my blood run cold. "Is Ava here? I need to talk to her." Ethan, my lying, cheating husband, had come home early. I stood, smoothing my dress and steeling myself for the confrontation to come. As I walked towards the foyer, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked different. Harder, more determined. This was just the beginning. I stood in the doorway, facing Ethan. His eyes widened, taking in my tear-stained face and Claude's protective stance beside me. "Ava, what's wrong?" he asked, stepping forward. I held up my phone. "Care to explain these messages, Ethan?" The color drained from his face. I can explain." "Save it," I snapped. "How long has this been going on?" He fumbled for words, but Claude cut in. "I think you should leave, Ethan. Now." "No," I said, surprising myself. "I want answers, starting with who else knew about this." Ethan's eyes darted away, and I felt my stomach drop. "Your parents," I whispered. "They knew, didn't they?" His silence was all the confirmation I needed. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. "How could they?" I choked out. "After everything." "They didn't want to get involved," Ethan mumbled. Claude scoffed. "Of course they didn't. They never liked Ava anyway." I turned to my sister, shocked. "What?" She looked apologetic. "I overheard them talking at the last family dinner. They've never thought you were good enough for their precious son." The room spun around me. 10 years of forced smiles and polite conversation, all a lie. I stumbled back, gripping the wall for support. "Ava, please," Ethan pleaded. "We can work this out. I'll end it, I promise." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. "Get out," I said quietly. "What? Get out." My voice grew stronger. "I want you gone by morning, and don't even think about going to your parents. I'll be having words with them soon enough." As Ethan slunk away, defeated, I turned to Claude. "I need a plan," I said, a new determination rising within me. "Will you help me?" Claude's eyes gleamed. "Oh, honey, I thought you'd never ask." The alarm blared, jolting me awake. For a blissful moment, I forgot everything. Then reality crashed down, and I buried my face in the pillow. "Rise and shine, sis," Claude called, barging into my room. "No wallowing allowed." I groaned. 5 more minutes of misery? "Nope, you've got work, remember? Can't let Ethan think he's broken you." "Right, work." I dragged myself out of bed, dreading the day ahead. At the office, I plastered on a smile, determined to keep up appearances. But as I settled at my desk, a familiar voice made my stomach churn. "Ava, can we talk?" Ethan stood there, looking contrite. I glanced around, acutely aware of our coworkers' curious stares. "This isn't the place, Ethan," I hissed. "Please," he begged, "just hear me out." Before I could respond, Martin appeared at my side. "Everything okay here?" Ethan's eyes narrowed. "This is between me and my wife." "Ex-wife," I corrected, finding strength in Martin's presence. Ethan's face darkened. "You don't mean that. Look, I made a mistake, but my parents think we should work this out, for the family's sake." I laughed bitterly. "Your parents? The ones who knew about your affair and said nothing?" Martin's eyebrows shot up, but he remained a steady presence beside me. Ethan leaned in, his voice low. "They're worried about you, Ava. About your stability. Maybe it would be best if you took some time off. Got some help." The implication hit me like a slap. He was trying to make me look unstable, to discredit me. "I think you should leave," Martin said firmly. As Ethan skulked away, I turned to Martin, my mind reeling. He's trying to gaslight me, I whispered. Martin squeezed my shoulder. We won't let him. In fact, I think it's time we fight back. I nodded, a plan forming. You're right. No more Ethan and his parents learn what I'm really capable of. I sat across from Martin in the dimly lit coffee shop, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug. I can't believe Ethan's trying to make me look unstable, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Martin leaned forward, his eyes filled with concern. We need to act fast, Ava. Ethan's playing dirty, and his parents are backing him up. I nodded, feeling a surge of determination. You're right. It's time to fight fire with fire. We spent the next hour outlining a plan. Martin, it turned out, had a knack for strategy that rivaled my own. By the time we finished, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. As we were leaving, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Claude. SOS. Ethan's at the house, bringing his parents. My heart raced. I have to go, I told Martin. Ethan's ambushing me at home with Richard and Marjorie. Martin's face darkened. Want me to come with you? I shook my head. No, I need to face this alone. But could you be on standby? He squeezed my hand. Always. I rushed home, my mind whirling. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw 3 familiar figures through the living room window. Taking a deep breath, I stepped inside. Ethan, Richard, and Marjorie turned to face me. Claude stood off to the side, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Ava, dear, Marjorie began, her voice sickly sweet. We're here to talk about your condition. My condition? I repeated, incredulous. Richard cleared his throat. Ethan's told us about your erratic behavior. We're concerned. I looked at Ethan, who couldn't meet my eyes. In that moment, I realized the full extent of his betrayal. He wasn't just trying to discredit me. He was trying to take everything. My hands clenched into fists. It was time to show them all exactly who they were dealing with. You want to talk? I said, my voice steady. Fine, let's talk. I stood my ground, facing Ethan and his parents. The air crackled with tension as I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Let's start with the truth, shall we? I said, my voice steady. Ethan's been unfaithful, and you two knew about it. Richard's face reddened. Now, Ava, let's not be hasty. Hasty. I laughed bitterly. I've been patient for 10 years. I'm done. Marjorie stepped forward, her eyes narrowed. Ava, dear, you're clearly not well. We're only trying to help. Help, Claude scoffed from the corner. You're trying to gaslight her. I held up a hand, silencing the room. I have proof of Ethan's affair, and your knowledge of it. I pulled out my phone, showing them the incriminating messages I'd discovered. Ethan paled. Ava, please. Save it, I snapped. I'm filing for divorce. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Richard and Marjorie exchanged worried glances. You can't do that, Ethan said, his voice low and threatening. Think about what you're throwing away. I stood taller, unflinching. I'm not throwing away anything. I'm reclaiming my life. Suddenly, Marjorie lunged forward, trying to grab my phone. In the scuffle, it clattered to the floor, the screen cracking. Time seemed to slow as I watched Ethan snatch up the phone, his fingers working frantically to delete the evidence. In that moment, I realized the true depths of their desperation. They would stop at nothing to maintain their perfect facade. As Ethan handed the phone back, a smug smile on his face, I made a decision. This wasn't just about saving myself anymore. It was about exposing the truth, no matter the cost. I met Claude's eyes across the room, and she nodded almost imperceptibly. It was time to put our plan into action. You've made a big mistake, I said quietly, my resolve hardening. All of you. I sat across from Martin in his office, my hands shaking as I recounted the confrontation with Ethan and his parents. They tried to destroy the evidence, I said, my voice trembling. But they don't know I have backups. Martin nodded, his expression grim. It's time, Ava. We need to expose everything. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. You're right. Let's do it. We spent the next few hours compiling evidence. Emails, text messages, financial records. Each piece revealed a new layer of Ethan's deceit and his parents' complicity. As we worked, Martin's phone buzzed. His face paled as he read the message. Ava, you need to see this. He handed me the phone. It was an email from our company's HR department. Ethan had filed a formal complaint against me, citing erratic behavior and misuse of company resources. My stomach dropped. He's trying to get me fired. Martin squeezed my hand. We won't let that happen, but we need to move fast. Just then, my own phone rang. It was Claude, her voice frantic. "Ava, Ethan's here at your place. He's packing up your things, saying you've had a breakdown." Panic surged through me. "I'm on my way." As Martin and I raced to my house, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was it, the moment everything would change. We pulled up to see Ethan loading boxes into his car. When he saw us, his face contorted with rage. "You have no right to be here," he shouted. I stepped forward, my voice steady. "This is my home, Ethan, and it's time for the truth to come out." I held up a flash drive, watching his eyes widen in recognition. "Everything's here. The affair, the gaslighting, the financial manipulation. It's over." Ethan lunged for the drive, but Martin stepped between us. In that moment, I realized the true cost of my revenge. Was I ready to destroy not just my marriage, but Ethan's entire life? As Ethan's parents pulled up, joining the fray, I knew I had to make a decision. There was no turning back now. The tension in the air was palpable as I stood my ground, flash drive clutched tightly in my hand. Ethan's parents had joined us, their faces a mix of anger and fear. "Ava, think about what you're doing," Richard pleaded, his voice strained. I looked at each of them in turn. Ethan, Richard, Marjorie, the people who had betrayed me, who had tried to make me doubt my own sanity. "I have thought about it," I said, my voice steady, "for far too long." With a nod to Martin, I turned and walked towards the house. Behind me, I heard Ethan's desperate footsteps. "You can't do this," he shouted. "You'll ruin everything." I spun around, fury burning in my chest. "You ruined everything, Ethan, you and your lies." As if on cue, cars began pulling up. Our neighbors, friends, colleagues, all arriving for what they thought was a surprise anniversary party. The invitations had been Martin's idea, a stroke of genius. Claude emerged from the house, a laptop in her hands. She gave me a questioning look, and I nodded. "It's time," I said. As our guests gathered, confused murmurs filling the air, Claude set up the laptop. With trembling fingers, I inserted the flash drive. "What are you doing?" Marjorie hissed, trying to grab my arm. I shook her off, telling the truth. The screen came to life, projecting onto the side of the house. Emails, text messages, bank statements, all laid bare for everyone to see. Gasps and shocked whispers rippled through the crowd. I watched as Ethan's face crumpled, chewed at his carefully constructed world falling apart. But as the evidence of his betrayal played out for all to see, I felt no triumph, only a deep, aching sadness. In that moment, standing before the ruins of my marriage and the shocked faces of our community, I realized the true cost of revenge. Was this really what I wanted? As Ethan's desperate eyes met mine, I faced the hardest decision of my life. Could I find it in myself to stop this, or was it already too late? As the last of the evidence faded from the screen, a heavy silence fell over the crowd. I stood there, my heart pounding, watching the faces of those I'd once called friends and family. Ethan stepped forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ava, I'm sorry." For a moment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. But as I looked at the devastation around me, the shocked neighbors, Ethan's crumpled form, even Richard and Marjorie's defeated expressions, I realized this wasn't the victory I'd imagined. Claude appeared at my side, her hand on my shoulder. "You did it, sis. It's over." But was it? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my choices. "No," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's not over. It's just beginning." I turned to face the crowd. "I'm not here to destroy anyone. I'm here to reclaim my life, my truth, and maybe we can all learn from this." Murmurs rippled through the gathering. I saw nods of understanding, even a few tentative smiles. I looked at Ethan, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in years. "We're done," I said softly, "but I hope you find peace." As the crowd began to disperse, Martin approached. "What now?" he asked. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. "Now, I start over, on my own terms." In the days that followed, Ethan and his parents faced the consequences of their actions, but I found I no longer needed to see them suffer. My revenge had transformed into something else, a reclaiming of my own power. Claude and Martin stood by me as I navigated my new life. There were tough days, moments of doubt, but with each passing week, I grew stronger, more sure of myself. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I realized something profound. The greatest revenge wasn't in destroying Ethan's world. It was in building my own, filled with honesty, self-respect, and genuine relationships. I had found my peace, and in doing so, I had won the only battle that truly mattered.